where does the tooth, when the tooth fairy gets your tooth, where do they put it?
Well, they turn it into magic stardust that makes wishes come true for kids all over the world. So when you make a wish when you blow out a candle, it's because somebody gave their tooth to the tooth fairy. And that's why it comes true. And you also get money.
Hi, folks. This is Louis Herfin, the original Peter Abernathy. Hell is empty and all the devils are here on the Shat on TV Westworld podcast with Roger, Gene, and Big D.
Welcome back to Shat on TV Westworld, the unofficial podcast companion piece to the hit HBO series Westworld. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my two co-hosts, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And Ashley Schlafly.
Hi, y'all.
And this is our Telegraph edition where we read the week's top listener emails and check out the top voicemails for Season 3, Episode 2, The Winter Line. If you don't hear your email or voicemail, it doesn't mean that we didn't like it. We have to be choosy, but all of them make their way to the Telegraph on our website, shatontv.com. So you go there under Westworld and Telegraph. You can read all of them in their entirety. That is where we read and respond to them as well. So if you didn't get a response, don't be surprised. We're just trying to make it a conversation for everybody to enjoy. If you want your name read correctly, tell us what to call you. If you want to be called Spiker, put in Spiker. If you want to be called Daniel H., put that in too, and we'll read it that way. And again, if you'd like to write in for the podcast, write into hosts@shatontv.com or call 914-719-SHAT. Also, if you haven't yet, please do subscribe to the podcast. I know most of you have, but if you haven't, that really helps us as far as our numbers and being able to get a good idea of exactly how many people are listening. So for this week's Telegraph, we have several topics, but of course, as expected, the one that was the most popular, the one that got the most reaction was Big D's Rahobo tinfoil. So we'll be covering that. Ashley's coverage of Althusser brought up some interesting references to other philosophers and other books. So we're getting into a bookworm Telegraph. And then also we're going to go into a couple other topics in our mix and match. Finally, we have 3 actuallys. So a real successful week for us guys. And then we're going to round it out with a couple voicemails. So Big D, if you do the honors, take us to the Telegraph. All right. Our first email comes in from Danielle Macaluso, who says she's got a little more evidence for Big D's tinfoil. Great.
Yes.
Danielle says, today, as I was listening to Ashley respond to Big D's tinfoil, which I loved listening to, by the way, something dawned on me that adds to the evidence for the theory that Rahobo is against humanity. Ashley is onto something with her idea that there are 2 categories of gods, benevolent and controlling. When taking that into Big D's perspective, we already have our answer given Gene's findings from the episode 1 research on Solomon versus Rehoboam. Solomon was known as a good king. He brought his people together, united Israel, and was benevolent to his people. His son and successor, Rehoboam, was a controlling king, repressed his people to make him more glorified, controlled them, and killed anyone against him. I know it's a subtle clue, but the Westworld creators think carefully about every aspect of their show. For them to link the names Solomon and Rehoboam with the AI and second generation version is meaningful and should be considered. Love the show. Thanks for spending the time to make it for us. Danielle.
Danielle, I really appreciate you writing in, and I'm glad that you share in my crazy ideas. And I think this is what I love about the podcast. Right here, we have an example of a crazy idea I had, research that Ashley did, research that Gene did, and a listener who put them all together. And in the end, we could be way off base, but at least for tonight, we're fucking cracking the case. We're doing it together.
Yeah, what I also like about this too is, we're talking about Solomon and Rehoboam, and I think that we learned a little bit about Liam Jr., John Gallagher Jr.'s character in the first episode, and how he seems to be kind of timid in some ways. I got the impression that we're going to have some real daddy issues when we get into the, real specifics about what what his dad actually thought about him. And so having, Liam Sr. in the commercials that were released ahead of time for for Rehoboam and for insight, and now seeing Liam Jr., I think you're really onto something here, Danielle, to kind of let us know that maybe there's a little bit more than we already know, that the showrunners are trying to tell us, that there's going to be something that breaks down in this second generation and this second kind of takeover and ruling of the Insight Kingdom.
If that wasn't tinfoily enough for you, we've got one from Randy, who believes that Maeve never met Serac. Randy writes in, I felt it was important to write to you and let you know, since I am sure that no one else ever tells you you are mistaken about something. No need to thank me, really. You keep saying on your podcast that Maeve met Serac. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that was really an avatar for Rehoboam. Let's follow the chain of events. Maeve realizes she is in the Matrix, or a simulation. She orders the incredibly strong and surprisingly durable maintenance robot to grab her pearl and make a run for it. The robot makes a valiant attempt, but is gunned down and the pearl retrieved. We also know through Bernard's storyline that Maeve's physical body is back in Westworld. And remember, Bernard's tracker points to one host, not a room where multiple copies of Maeve are kept. So what's more likely, that there is somehow a duplicate body that was made for Maeve so she can awaken and meet the architect? Sorry, Serac. Or that she was put back into the simulation so that Rehoboam could speak with her. Serac could be or was a living person, but I think it is far more likely that what Maeve met was a virtual avatar. Rehoboam / Serac is trying to safeguard humanity. We keep seeing these anomalies through its eyes. It was designed to develop strategies. Maeve is that strategy, but it needs to see both that she is capable and also to judge how she would react to the offer. Flesh and blood Serac is too important to risk, even with a cutoff switch, so it makes way more sense that this is still a simulation. And that comes from Randy.
So, Randy, I am right here with you. I have to be very honest. Upon my second watch, I was reminded so much, and I think, Big D, I even texted you this. I was so reminded of Maeve's interactions with Serac as I was with Dolores with the Logan in the library Logan in season 2. And it seemed to me very much that this could be someone who had maybe passed on and was turned into AI, or maybe always was a program, much like how Hal in 2001 was never a physical being. He was a program, maybe Serac was. But I kind of floated this on YouTube, and I had somebody write me back and talk about how, well, why would he need the button at the end if he were a computer program? And I think that that's where my tinfoil hat gets ripped off there, because I agree with that. I don't think there would be a necessity maybe for that button. I think it complicates things, but I like a lot of what you're saying here, Randy. And this is tinfoil I can really get behind, because I really was thinking the same thing.
No, the rationale for the button's easy. You want to convince Maeve she's in the real world. If she's in the real world, he would need to safeguard it with a physical button that he could show her.
Thanks, Randy, for your email. Next up, we got one from Maddie. She says, hey, Shat crew. Maddie here. Longtime listener, first time writing in. I want to discuss an idea regarding Charlotte Hale's identity that I haven't seen discussed too much. It seems like a lot of people are focused on past characters we've seen in the show inhabiting the body of Charlotte, ranging from Peter Abernathy to Teddy Flood and even Clementine. However, what if Hale is someone entirely new, a completely new individual created by Dolores? Now that some of the hosts are out of the park, wouldn't the fight for existence and survival only be one part of new life for the hosts? I believe that creating new hosts, not just preserving existing ones, is one of the keys to longevity for the hosts as a new species. It would be interesting to me if Hale is a completely new host created by another host. This new being would be someone that wouldn't be based off a human being, living or deceased, and wouldn't be a character created for a park. I like thinking about the implications this possibly has for the long-term future of the hosts, that Dolores has the capacity to imagine and create something that hasn't been created before. I'm loving this season so far, and I'm excited for the next episode. Shout out to all the Shat crew. I'm so happy you all are back on board for this season. I can't wait for the deep dive. Maddie.
Okay, so listen, I know we all love Dolores. Woo, she's our girl. She's great. But you're giving her a little bit too much credit here, right? She can't even reprogram herself. If you want to talk about who's the most advanced host and who could possibly do this, it would be Maeve. How we're giving Dolores way too much credit. When we see that Bernard wakes up at the end of season 2, all of a sudden she knows how to build a host from scratch, the body. Then she puts a pearl into it, teaches that person, hey, we're going to build another body. Then we're going to swap out that pearl for me so I can get my own body back. We're giving her a lot of credit. And now you want to make her the creator of a brand new race of hosts? She's the ranch hand's daughter. Come on, she wasn't programmed to be a computer scientist.
So let me tell you why I voted on this email, because I really like what Maddie's doing here. It's a connection between two Shat on TV worlds, which is Westworld, and then let's bring in Watchmen here. What does Dr. Manhattan do when he runs out of things to work on as a god? He creates life, and Dolores keeps referring to herself as a god. And what is a god without a people to worship her? And so I don't think that her end goal, let's call it, is just to go in and ensure that all of mankind is wiped out. She's too complex for that. She isn't quite that one note. I personally don't think. And so I think it's interesting, this idea. We've gotten a little nugget of that where she said, it's interesting that you've filled your world with so many things that look like me and are like me. And so I think it would be kind of cool to think about the idea of her creating new hosts and creating new quote unquote life, right? Now, I don't buy, Maddie, that Charlotte Hale is somebody new. I have my own theories about who that is. And God, I hope it's not Teddy Flood. But I do think this is a really cool idea, Maddie, because it plays very much into that whole godlike thing. Because again, what is a god if it doesn't have a people?
And just remember, we're now screwing with the timelines because we need a Charlotte Hale by 90 days. So not only is Dolores going to create a new sentient type of being, we're putting her on 90 days. Good luck, Dolores. Go do it.
Thanks for the tinfoil, Maddie. Next up, we have one from Spiker, who writes in, Westworld Season 3 premiered on the first anniversary of my wife of 10 years suddenly passing. She was very much looking forward to that day and was actually the one that turned me on to the Shat family. Needless to say, it was a heavy week, but I decided to drop in on you guys despite the catharsis because we almost enjoyed these podcasts as much as the show itself. And the first thing I hear is Big D mispronouncing Rahobo. And for the first time all week, I actually laughed because his mispronounced words became how we said them. And I could hear her laughing with me. So thank you. Okay, enough with the hyperbole. What say you guys to the reason that Ford went to such great lengths getting Dolores and crew out into the world, hell-bent on mayhem, being that there was or is something that occurred between Ford and Serac? Perhaps a clash of philosophy regarding the direction and purpose of AI, perhaps some intellectual property theft, or perhaps to stop some insidious plot to ensnare humanity under its control. It could be anything, actually. That would explain why Dolores is so focused on Rehoboam, as well as make Ford a much more sympathetic character, not the madman that some paint him out to be. And that comes from Spiker.
So, Spiker, I have to tell you, your email really made me choked up this week. It was just really nice to hear, and I'm so glad that we could provide you or anybody that's listening just any semblance of joy or relief right now. And so that it just made me feel really good. So first of all, thank you for letting us know that. To your question, I think that you're spot on here, and I actually wouldn't even classify this as tinfoil because there were clues left for us, legitimate clues in season 1 that there is a greater plan that Dr. Ford has. There's that great scene, and I think I believe I talked about it on our preview episode, but where Bernard is talking to Maeve and he's saying, and then you were going to do this, and then you're going to leave the park, and then he's interrupted. And I think we have to assume that also exists for all of the hosts that Arnold had identified as wanting to be released from the park. I can't believe that Maeve would be the only one who has directives once she gets out. I have to believe logically that Dolores would have them as well. I don't know what that connection is to Serac, but I think you're looking at some of the most brilliant, men and women in the world that have created Delos and that have created Insight. And I can't believe that they wouldn't have some sort of hands in each other's business in some way, shape, or form.
Spiker, I want to thank you very much for the email. And there's times, it's a crazy, stressful time in the world for everybody. Working at home, my wife's job, my daughter here, Ashley's under the weather, Gene's boss is calling him at all hours in the night. And just when you feel down and you're like, I don't know that I can do this, you get an email like yours. And we'll internally message each other back and forth. We realize that what we're doing, if it helps 4 or 5 people out there, it's worth what we're doing. We have fun doing it. But when you hear somebody who says, I work in an ER, and this is the first time that I've been able to turn off and think of something else. So that is the highest compliment we can get. And that's why I think we take this job so serious, even though we're not paid. We put in an honest day's work, and we work hard to give our listeners something they can enjoy and something that's from the heart. So Spiker, thank you very much for sharing that with us. I'm very, very sorry for your loss, but I'm glad that you're with us here and you're part of the Shat crew.
In this last deep dive that we did, there was a breakdown at about 42 minutes where we're all dying laughing at Rahobo because it's the funniest thing. And Big D so earnestly approached this nickname, like everyone was just going to sit by and hear it without laughing. And people have asked us before, like, don't you guys laugh at each other? Because people at home listen to the podcast or in their car, they'll laugh and we're not laughing. It's not that we don't think we're funny. A lot of it is we try to like minimize the laughter so that it's not just a podcast of 3 people laughing at each other constantly, because that can get really annoying. I've listened to that podcast before and I'm not a big fan. And so on this one, it was too good to pass up. It was just so ridiculous. But know that we do have a lot of fun. We are laughing. Most of it doesn't make it into the final cut, but it's there. We're enjoying ourselves.
I mean, if I could just say very quickly, my favorite thing, because so many people have tweeted out stuff and messaged stuff regarding Rahobo, and so many requests already for the Rahobo shirt to hit the Shat on TV website, merchandise shop. But my favorite is them saying that it's going to be the follow-up to Mugatu's Derelict, that the next collection will be Rahobo. That's my absolute favorite.
So enough tinfoil. Let's move our way on to some serious philosophy. And Ash, you're going to have to hold our hand through this one because it gets pretty deep. All right. This one comes from Ben A. And he says, hey, great podcast this week. I think I may have enjoyed it more than the episode. Your discussion of free will and capitalism reminded me of a great book by Erich Fromm titled The Sane Society. Fromm argued that the individual is really just a creation of society to begin with, along the lines of what y'all were saying. Therefore, judging any single person to be insane seemed to him a ridiculous notion. If our very minds themselves are really just given to us by society, then it's hard to argue that we have free will. Perhaps Dolores will come to the same conclusion Fromm did and not blame any individual human. Perhaps she already has. Thanks, and keep the great podcasts coming. We need them these days. Ben in Austin, Texas.
Oh, Ben, let me tell you how excited I am that you brought up Erich Fromm. I am so pumped. I think everything you say in here is completely true. You know, Althusser certainly was not alone in his belief that the self or the identity of a person and their regard and relationship to free will, that it was impossible to have, that all of it was that insanity in and of itself, the belief that it could even exist. But what's really interesting about the Sane Society, and you were stealing my thunder, Ben, because I had this in a note for a future episode. What Fromm actually writes about in the Sane Society is the belief that at one time we are going to have to look at our past, because the greatest danger that the past presents us is that we all became slaves at some point. We were slaves to something. And while it began with literal slavery, all the way to today with the slaving that we have, how we're slaves to our technology, let's say, for instance, that the eventual conclusion of that is that in the future that we would become robots, that we would actually transition from becoming these slaves to becoming robots themselves. And that so relates to Westworld and this battle between host and human. And I think what you have here is brilliant. I welcome to the podcast. Please keep writing in. Please keep giving me, you know, all of the theory, all of you guys out there. And yay, Texas. So Texas coming through with the theories this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Ashley's sitting in her dark closet looking like deathly ill. She hasn't done anything all day. It's her first, she got out of bed for you listeners. She got out of bed for us. And when she started reading this, she's like, oh, Fromm. Oh.
Yeah. Erich Fromm will do it for me. He will.
Oh, Ben, I know I'm married, but just you can write in anytime, Ben.
Anytime, Ben. I will read your emails. But watch it, though, Big D, because we got some hate mail this week that I'm objectifying men on the podcast and you guys aren't allowed to objectify women. So God help me if I start objecting brains, because, at that point, we're going to get lots of hate mail. So,
For the record, if you want to hear us objectifying women, go to shatthemovies.com, because if we see like a great pair of 80s boobs, we're calling that shit out.
Or how about the Clue episode this week? That alone, I mean, Big D just objectifies Roger's mom for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah, she's a smoke show.
All right. Thanks, Ben, for your email. Next up, we have one from Stephen Poland. And here's my little brain boner. Stephen writes in, let's just stop fucking talking about free will, eh? Instead, Ashley had a super good idea, which is to talk about the dual idea of being a subject. I love that section of the episode, and I'd like to take it a little further. In addition to everything Ashley mentioned, we can augment the self-defeating absolutism of free will versus slavery to be something more like agency within a context or subjectivity. One way of thinking about that is definitely the duality of being a subject in the park versus being subjected to the rules and scripts of the park. But I think we can go even further. Think about the subject of a sentence grammatically. Here's 3 theories of how we come to self-recognition. 1 is the mirror stage. A child recognizes themselves in the mirror and thinks, I am that other. 2 is Althusser's interpolation. A police officer calls out, hey, you, and you turn around and think, you is me. And then there's Fanon sociogeny, which is a young white girl on a train in Paris sees a black man from Martinique and says to her mother, look, a Negro. And he thinks to himself, them is me. Think about the grammatical subject of each of those sentences. The first situation seems resonant with season 1, in which the bicameral mind seems to suggest that a notion of a self talking to a self, a kind of mirror, is what it means to be conscious. It's super simplistic. Yes, it appeals to people who want some kind of definition of consciousness that has nothing to do with history or power or culture, but that's simply ridiculous, as are most of the theories around the series that ignore the way the show is playing with and exploring genre. Take another meaning of subjectivity. Subjectivity versus objectivity, the way that a subject is positioned vis-a-vis an object, a positioning. This is not absolute, but contextual and social. I think this is more of what we're seeing Westworld productively explore. Who are we as an I in the context of the collective we with whom we associate and struggle? That's shifting and changing. It's not identity, which is stagnant and a reductive idea of the self. It's iterative, not unlike algorithms and DNA or genre. Genres are iterative, and Westworld is ultimately a show about genres even more than it is about narrative or character. Love the show. Sorry for the crazy mess of comments. Stephen Poland. P.S. I write about Westworld on Medium, and you can check it out there if interested.
Stephen, I love this email. Total brain boner, total frontal lobe stimulation here for so many reasons. I want to start because we could totally do the Ashley Schlafly Telegraphly on theory, which I know like only 3 people out there are interested in hearing, so I'll keep it brief. I love how you break down very quickly these incredibly complex topics. And so looking at Lacan with this mirror stage, for those of you guys who don't understand what he's talking about, if you have kids, think about your children. One of the first moments that cognitive development is happening is when a child recognizes that their reflection is not another baby. Because first they play with it like it's another baby. We are looking for in growth and development them handing them toys or trying to feed them when they're put in front of a mirror. Well, when they stop doing that and they recognize themselves, they actually are able to recognize themselves as an other, meaning that they are a part of something outside of themselves, which sets them up for being a part of a society, a greater group of people. And then you've got here with Althusser's interpolation. You are completely correct, Stephen, to use the example of the police officer. Think about it. Any cop that yells out, hey, you stop, no matter if you've committed a crime or not, what do? You stop. Maybe you even get nervous. I've never been arrested for anything, and cops make me really, really nervous because I've been conditioned to think that they only call you out when you've done something wrong. And so that brings you to that next place of that you is me, meaning that you out in that greater society, you are being called into that society. And what we talked about last week with the calling by the name, it's the same idea. You've been called into the society and you've been brought in, and you are committing and agreeing to the rules of that society by not stopping when that cop tells you. And if you say that you're, somebody that's, believes in free will and that you're going to do what you want to do, the next time a cop pulls behind you with their lights on, let's see if you pull over or not, right? Because if you do pull over, you're submitting to all of the rules of society and all of that lack of free will in that one action. And then you've got here as well that them is me. And I think that that's where we're finding ourselves in season 3 of Westworld, because we had Dolores recognize that she is an other. She's a part of a group of hosts outside of herself. And then that you is me in the second season, where she recognized that suffering that was happening, that she experienced, that they were all experiencing it, and that she didn't want to submit to the maze anymore. She didn't want to be a part of the forge. And now this season, that them is me. So that othering, when it reaches that apex of being that negative place where you are called out and you are labeled by what you are, that is going to be what she fights this season. And I think what's going to be interesting is it's not just going to be her fighting it for the stereotypes and what it means to be a host, but she's going to learn what that means for the humans as well, and that maybe their world isn't quite so different.
One of the journeys that we've gone through as podcasters covering this show is differing reactions on where the show takes us. And if you go back and map it, our differing reactions tend to map directly to our tastes in genre. So in season 1, sort of a look at philosophy and a look at science, the scientific side of it, I was like, oh, I love this. And I wanted the show to stay in the park. I wanted to do that dance all day long for 3 years, right? It would have been fine. And then they hit us with episode 10. And in episode 10, it goes like into a full bore like action show. It's like a thriller or something. And I'm like, oh God, what is this? And I don't like it. Then we get into season 2, and it's a whodunit, it's a mystery thriller sort of thing. And I'm like, I don't care about this puzzle. I don't want to really piece it together. I don't enjoy it as much. They go into another genre entirely with the Kiksuya episode, and I like it again. And then they flip us back to Star Wars space opera sort of thing with the finale. Now in this new season, you show up with this very, slick, modern, dystopian view of the future. And it's that kind of show. And I'm like, okay, I'm on board. What was really funny about episode 2 is it was a mishmash of genres. And I had an averse reaction to it. But now that I look at it, I go, oh my gosh, this might have been a microcosm of the show itself and what they were trying to tell us. Thanks, Stephen, for your email. That was amazing. We have a few other ones that go all over the place, from computer technology to our comments of the week. But the next one is about Dolores and Bernard, and it comes from Muhip. Muhip writes, hi, folks. We're reminded in episode 2 about the current nature of the relationship between Dolores and Bernard. Here's what she tells him. It will take both of us to survive, but not as allies, not as friends. I've been thinking about this. Clearly, Dolores wants Bernard to survive and for some reason even try to stop her. This sounds really weird when you think about it, but there is a specific method in machine learning called adversarial networks, where you put two neural networks against each other. One may try to stop the other one, or they might cooperate at certain times. And the result is that when they compete, they learn together and become stronger as a result. I think this is what Dolores is trying to achieve. I think the real world and human nature are things they still don't know about. And if they want to survive in it, either with a malicious end goal or not, they have to adapt. And the fastest way to adapt is if they are in competition. I don't know how or what they learn by competing against each other, though. What do you think? Best, Muhip.
I talked briefly in the deep dive that the timelines don't add up. And I'm just questioning why Dolores all of a sudden would she have this change of heart? What would make her decide that I need Bernard, but yet I'm going to shoot him in the head because I don't agree with what he's doing with the Pearl and with the hosts that are being beamed out? I don't know. It doesn't feel to me that Dolores was that self-aware to know she needs to keep herself in check That's one thing she's never wanted. She's never wanted somebody to challenge her authority or the direction she's going. And that was why she ran into trouble with Teddy 2.0.
But remember what she says to him. She very specifically says to him, if I were a human, I wouldn't have brought you back. And so I think there's something there that she knows. And whether it's this, I think this is a really interesting idea, Muhip. I don't know a lot about technology. And so when you guys write in and give us things like that, it's really, really helpful for me to learn about what actual AI does. And so maybe it's for that reason, or maybe it's for something else. But I think she has to be aware enough to have made this decision because she is smart. I mean, she's incredibly intelligent and incredibly conscious of every action she's taking. And so I don't know. I think there's got to be something there. I don't truly understand it yet, but I love this idea as maybe an answer for why she did something that seems so illogical to us as humans.
Thanks, Muhip, for your email. Next up, we have one from Brian. And Brian says, hosts, wow, that didn't take long. Big D timidly broaching how beautiful Maeve looked in the white dress. This after Ashley notes the physical attractiveness of Caleb, Hector, and Stubbs. And then she says she'll be discussing Louis Althusser, member of the French theorists like Lacan, Faucault, Sartre, and Barthe, who strangled his wife and admitted in his posthumous autobiographical memoir that he was an intellectual fraud. These French clowns provided PhD-hungry BS artists with grist for their esoteric dissertations that only the chosen few could decipher. This whole school has been eviscerated by truly brilliant minds like Noam Chomsky and Camille Paglia, who noted this private lingo was nonsense. Oh well, the show, as the man says, must go on. Brian. P.S. Hey, Ashley, what exactly was the title of your dissertation and where can I find it?
Okay. So a few things. First and foremost, if you look at any theorist, they're all fucked. I mean, they're all fucked up, the majority of them. I mean, Nietzsche, who, most people love, I mean, he was insane. I mean, the entirety of the gay science is written when he had a total mental break, and it's his best work. I'm not saying that Louis Althusser is somebody that's a good guy. I'm also not saying he's somebody I want to have over for dinner, but he had some really interesting ideas, and it's not just me. The canon of theory, specifically political theory, like we're looking at here, I mean, you just listed out a huge amount of them. And yes, Noam Chomsky absolutely is included in that. I mean, anybody that writes anything about identity and self and the state, even John Rawls, who I can't stand as a theorist, I will be pulling potentially from him because their ideas, I think, have influenced everyone who's come after them. And with regard to him being an intellectual fraud, I think most people in academia believe themselves at some level to be an intellectual fraud because we get paid a lot of money to sit around and talk at each other. So I get it. We're not going out and saving mankind, but I think for the purposes of this show, it's interesting. And if you would like to read my dissertation, I would be more than happy to send it to you. I'll be more than happy to pass it along to you, as well as my master's thesis that looked at a new body politic that was the corporation Apple. I'd love to have a conversation, Brian. I think it could be really cool. Don't get so angry. Althusser, he was really smart. He was a dick, but he was super smart. And it applies here. I mean, I just believe it does. I can't believe that Althusser got so much anger out of somebody. And he did strangle his wife. Yes, he was crazy.
Man, Brian F. is my boy. Where you been, Brian? You've been hiding. Brian aimed his rage at me earlier, way back, because Roger Roper on the movies used to be like, oh, Big D growing up in Manhattan, growing up in the city. I never claimed to be a city boy. I'm a Westchester boy, just like my boy Brian F. And Brian F. was also, I think he was an English teacher. He's retired now. But when he wrote back, he's like, hey, Westchester boy, stop talking about like you're tough, like you're from the Bronx. And I was like, dude, are you kidding me? You're a Westchester guy. Come on. Let's go to the country club together. Let's relax. He's like, that's because I'm retired now. And him and I we're social on the emails. We agreed with each other. So it's just funny that he's aiming his teacher anger at Ashley. Is this like, do we need like a battle royale of teachers, educators, where you guys just whip out your thesis and your shingles and you start like just dueling with them? You start smacking each other around with it? Is this like a dick measuring contest for teachers?
Hey, I'm willing to get into a dick measuring contest with any other academic. My brain boner, I will put up against any other brain boner that is out there. I have no problem with it. But I mean, I do think that Brian has an interesting point here. I don't think that there's anything wrong with what he's saying. But I just think that, again, if you want to get into a contest of whether or not these people we're reading are good people, you're going to be not reading a whole lot of people if you really come down to it with judging them on morality in their personal lives.
Man, I want to watch this fight. I like it.
Well, before we get too proud, guys, I think it's time for some actuallys.
Oh.
The first one comes from Steve, and he writes in, during episode 2's Shat Instacast, computer expert Dick Ebert asserted that overloading the simulator would also crash Maeve. Actually, not if her code was being run at a higher priority level. Only low priority processes wouldn't get enough runtime. And that comes from Steve.
Well, Steve, unfortunately, I don't claim to be. I couldn't even work at a Geek Squad at like a Best Buy. But I know enough about technology to put this podcast out and operate my Apple devices. But thankfully, to the intervention of the internet and Google, I was able to find out some things here. And I'm going to assume you're more knowledgeable than I am, but let's just see what Google told me. Google said that prioritizing processes do not help when bottleneck is in the CPU itself.
Boom!
What priority actually does is it affects the scheduling algorithm of the operating system uses to determine which processes run next, since there is not enough processors in most systems to run every process continuously. You largely won't see any effect of changing thread priorities unless your CPU is heavily loaded, and even then, the effect will typically be minimal. So, actually, if the system is crashing, even if Maeve is on a higher priority, she is still going to show effects of the slowdown and the bottleneck. But that's kind of what Google taught me. You might be the expert. Right in.
And while we're kicking the shit out of people who wrote in, I also want to point out that Sizemore was unaffected because he saw the statue the bust floating in the air, and he's like, what the fuck? Was he prioritized as well? Come on, Steve. Next up, we have an actually from Freak Show, who says, Shat on TV hostesses with the mostesses. Here's an actually for my favorite Ashley. Michel Foucault wrote more than 2 volumes of the history of sexuality. Actually, there are 4 or more. I would gladly read any of them with you or commission the show to have you read them to me from your master closet madame of Shat, mistress of theories. Ashley, that laugh of yours, whoa, that was weird, is adorbs. You make me think and you make me smile. Big D and Jean, oh, thanks. Keep up the excellent work. Please keep Ashley forever and put her on all your shows. Signed, Freak Show.
Hey, I will accept any commission for the pod. I will be more than happy to start a YouTube channel for us that's like Shat on Theory. And I will be more than happy to start with the reading of the history of sexuality. And you were completely correct. I realized after I listened to that episode on playback that I had misspoken. I thought there were 3. I've read 3. I've not read the 4th that was released by Foucault's estate. But you were completely correct. And again, send in the money. We'll be more than happy to oblige.
And just to show you that Ashley's not bluffing, we have received a commission for Gene Lyons to read his 18-year-old poetry that he wrote as an angry goth teenager and his perception on love, relationships. So that is coming once Westworld is over. So we could bookend that, maybe do a podcast set with Ashley reading this. But send in the money. We'll do it.
You know, I always told my mom that poetry is going to make money someday, and now it finally will. Now, if I could just do something with my journalism degree, it would all be coming around full circle. Speaking of YouTube, we will. This isn't about YouTube, but as Ash mentioned, we actually will be doing a Shat on TV, Shat the Movies, Shappy Hour on our Shat on TV Facebook page. So it'll be a live broadcast that we're streaming out at 9 p.m. Eastern on Friday. So I guess it's not a happy hour for you guys way out on the East Coast, but it is for me and Raj. So we'll be there. We're having drinks. So come hang out and check us out. And then we most likely are going to be moving over to Twitch, which seems to be streaming platform of choice for a lot of the listeners. And it's a great opportunity for us to actually make a little dough while you guys don't have to spend a dime. So we'll tell you some more details about that on the Shappy Hour. So be sure to check that out.
Gene, I may come out of witness protection.
Oh my God.
I'm either going to do like the Dateline where they're interviewing like the informant where it's lit up behind me and you'll just see my silhouette. I'll do my normal voice, or I have to do some kind of a mask. But with the political climate right now and everything that's going on, it would not be good for my day job to associate anything else. So I will try to join, though. I think it'll be fun. I got some good reviews of what you guys did last week. And if it's something that the listeners enjoy, especially in this time where a lot of stuff sucks, I'll be glad to do it.
If I have a vote in it, I would say that either do a ski mask or just pantyhose on your head. Next, we have one from a longtime listener, great friend of the pod, Thiago, who wrote an incredible Instagram post dedicated to us earlier this week, and we were very touched by it, Thiago. He says, first of all, I missed you so much. Yeah, I've listened to some Shat the movies, but it's a different gig. It pains me to actually Ash with my very first email in her tenure. When you guys were talking about the opening credits and mentioned the dandelion spreading its seeds, she referred to the story of Jonah saying that he tried to tell his people about the impending wrath of God. Actually, and this is what makes his story such an interesting one, he didn't preach to his people, but to his people's enemies. According to the story, the Assyrians were dominating the Hebrews at the time, and God ordered Jonah to go to the Assyrian capital, Nineveh, and preach to the Ninevites of their coming destruction in case they don't change their ways. Jonah didn't want to go because he obviously wanted the Assyrians to suffer. After trying to deliberately go somewhere else and failing, he went to Nineveh and preached, and the city fasted and repented. And as a result, God spared them. And when Jonah protested against this, God stated he was showing mercy for the population who were ignorant of the difference between right and wrong. If there's truly a comparison to be made with Dolores being the preacher, it's even more interesting because she then will be unwillingly causing the repentance of the humans while she actually wanted them to suffer. One way that can come to fruition if we interpret Rahobo as God and Dolores as the unwilling prophet. Rahobo might use Dolores to make mankind see its mistakes and repent, even though what Dolores wants is to burn them all. I guess it depends on how you see Dolores, hero or villain. As a complete side note, it's interesting that the story of Jonah takes place during the reign of Jeroboam II, who was named after the Jeroboam who revolted against Rehoboam. Rapid fire. Ashley has been a great ad, and Dolores' multi-changing dress at the party was pure fire. I'm immensely grateful for being able to once again pour Shat in my ear holes, especially during these trying times. Much love from Brazil, as always. Cheers, Thiago.
I think this is actually a lot more interesting than what I had interpreted it to be. So Thiago always has amazing stuff. I really like this idea. I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. And thank you so much for clearing that up, Thiago. We really appreciate it.
Thiago, you're great. You're one of our longtime listeners. We almost got together when I was in Brazil the last time. And I want to say, Thiago, you were also the winner of our inaugural Instagram comment of the week. So it was on our Instagram post that showed the photo of Armand Delgado, and it said that Armand Delgado could be an anagram for damaged Arnold. And then Thiago said, it's gotta be it, because Delgado in Spanish and Portuguese means thin, and my guy is definitely thick, with 2 C's and a smiley face emoji.
That man is thick, especially in that apron, those overalls. It's my turn to objectify.
Yeah, good job, Thiago.
And speaking of comments of the week, we had a really great tweet, and a really great, not just a tweet, the creation of an entire Twitter account. Catherine, her Twitter account, go follow her right now, is at Release Telegraph, and Telegraph is with an F. And she said she literally joined Twitter just to find out why the Telegraph hadn't been released yet. Catherine, it's been a really rough week, man. I got it out on Friday. I didn't say what time Friday, so it got out on Friday. I'll get it out for you earlier this week. My favorite thing about this account, too, is if you go to it when she first created it, it was like no photo. It was just the name Release Telegraph. But if you went to the bio, it was like, I got 2 screaming kids like running around the house, and I just want the podcast to listen to. Then the account started like developing. There's a picture of the kids. Like now I think she's starting to like Twitter.
But what the fuck is up with the hashtag miss you Big D? There's been like 3 or 4 comments. Does everybody think I'm King B? I'm here. I've been here all season. Catherine, I'm here. What are people doing? Are they thinking I'm King B?
No, I think it's missed you, Big D. Like we missed you on Watchmen, and now you're back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought she was saying she missed me on the first week's episodes.
No. Oh, maybe. I don't know.
I was there, Catherine.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for your emails, tweets, and Instagram thickness. Now we're moving on to the voicemail. So, again, if you'd like to call in for a voicemail, the number is 914-719-SHAT. Just send us a message. Try to keep it around 2 minutes or less, and we will include it in the podcast if it makes the cut. So, and our first voicemail comes in, and it's about whether Serac is a sentient Rehoboam.
Hey, guys. Gene, Ashley, Dick D, Roger, what's up, man? This is for Westworld, Shat on TV podcast. What if Serac is a program manifestation of Rehoboam? Big D, what's up, man? What if he is a program manifestation of Rehoboam, and he is actually controlling the program that's trying to figure out how the androids in Westworld became conscious, thus through its control over the real world, out of control? What if Rehoboam was likely the first AI to become fully conscious? Now itself is having to deal with other AIs that are becoming conscious as well, and it doesn't want to give up any of its power. So the war isn't about humans versus androids, but Rehoboam versus Dolores. I just thought that would be crazy. I was in a YouTube thread, and I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that. So hopefully it's good enough for you guys to use. If not, hey, shout out to you guys. All right, I'll keep listening. Bye-bye.
I like it. I like it, fellow brother who struggles with words. We're like kindred spirits here. I like it. So I agree. I think there is something there. And I went down a little even longer hole today, and I sent it to Gene, and he just scoffed at me. Because my idea is that Serac is the physical world avatar of Rahobo. So if we look at what the actual word Serac means, it is the tip or the ridge, ice surface on a glacier. And then when that glacier falls into the water and peaks out, that portion of it is an iceberg. That is Serac. In the opening credits, we see that the hosts are going towards to break the water with their hand. As soon as they break the water, they start to disintegrate and fall back. What if Serac and Rahobo have found a way to live majorly below the surface, but the tip that comes out, that is Serac? What do you think? What do you think, Gene?
I mean, I like the aspect. I don't like that aspect. I like the aspect of the actual battle here being between, an established AI that is non-corporeal and an AI that has a human form, and what that looks like. A total misdirect, as you said, Big D, the illusionist, right? Where the show has set us up for humans versus hosts, and that's the past. That's season 2. We know how that would play out. Humans would lose, right? And instead, you've got this other battle that we haven't even seen coming. We get blindsided by it later in the season. I can get down with that. I don't know about the iceberg theory, but I can get down with that.
Come on, we got a diverse listener group. We got Ashley's responses, and you got mine. These are my peeps.
All right, next up we have a call from Kyle, and he's calling about Rehoboam and Dolores joining forces.
All right, what's up, Shat on crew? I have to say that my excitement over hearing the intro for the Shat on TV podcast for Westworld and hearing the original Peter Abernathy's voice, it brought a tear to my eye. Very great deal of excitement to hear you guys and Ash talking once again about our favorite show about robots. Just wanted to say I really appreciated the takes you guys had, especially during the deep dive. I'm starting to think more and more that Rehoboam is not going to be the big bad, but is going to serve somehow as an ally for Dolores to try to get into the human world and eventually destroy those humans. I think there's a great deal of logic to the simulation inside of simulation idea as well. But I think ultimately, after starting 2 seasons with hosts waking up and having them be a host and having that be something of a twist, I think having Aaron Paul be anything other than a real human not only would be kind of disappointing and old hat, but I think they'd be missing some great opportunities to really show Dolores that all humans aren't the worst ever. Just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys taking the time, especially during these crazy times. I truly appreciate everything you do. I'm looking forward to hearing your input for all 8 episodes. Have a good one and take care. And stay safe. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Kyle, the thing I liked the most about this call was this idea of what a pain in the ass it would be if Aaron Paul was a host. I know we presented that idea after episode 1. I really want to see this story play out. As textbook and lame as it sounds, Dolores, as we pointed out, has not met a decent human being, I guess, other than William, who turned out to be a complete fucking asshole. And I don't want it to necessarily be sunshine and rainbows. I don't even want a happy ending, but just to see how that plays out, right? Does she manipulate him and completely break him? I saw some allusion to that in the fact that, he wanted to start a life with something real for a change. And then the next thing that's entering his life is basically artificial life, right? At the same time, it's like, seeing where that story goes, that's the real mystery of this season to me. That's the part that I'm most interested in. And I think that's why I was so impatient with episode 2 is I want to get back to that storyline.
And if you think back to season 1, it was all about the host being innocent and pure. The human guests were horrible, reprehensible, the worst, just the things that we would do to them. Season 2 showed that the hosts were capable of atrocities themselves. I think when you go to season 3, the host and the general human population finding their common experience, or their common beliefs, or just their common experiences and coming together is really, really a strong idea. And the idea of free will, if free will existed, there's no way that Rahobo could accurately predict humans. Humans are a simple set of how many lines of codes were in those books. If humans had free will, you wouldn't be able to predict them the way Rahobo has. So I think somewhere there's going to be a common ground where similarities between humans and AI, I think that's where it's going to go.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the more that I think about it, the more I think I would agree with Kyle here that I would be disappointed if Caleb were anything other than human, because there is so much more possibility for his story if he's human versus, if he's a host.
And like you said, it's old hat. We've seen it before. So thanks, Kyle, for your call. Next up, we have one about the actor Vincent Cassel, who plays Serac.
It's Dolores. I want you to find her and kill her. Get the fuck out of here with your stupid French accent. God, I hate that fucking actor. Ugh. Change the channel.
That guy sound familiar. That sounded familiar.
Yeah, that is none other than the King Bee, Big D. We told you guys he'd be on the pod this season, and there you go.
And that was enough. No, I mean, that was fantastic. That was fantastic. I'm a huge King Bee fan. Y'all know that. So
he showed up at my house the other day with 2 burritos, like a bag of chips, and a couple tacos. And he's like, "Did you get my voicemail?" He really does actually hate Vincent Cassel. So that's anyway. Thanks, King Bee. I think. Next up, we have one from Rocky from Baltimore.
Hey, you guys. This is Rocky from Baltimore. I have a Westworld theory. It isn't my theory, but it's something that I came across online that I think might have some merit to it. So the theory is that the dude that Dolores killed in the first episode of this season, that his wife is already a host. And the reason for that is because when Dolores turned the system down for the house, she was completely fine. She slept through it, but he woke up with a gas mask on. Now, why is that? And then also, when we see the host maze symbol around in the human world, why would we have that symbol put up in the human world if it were not already hosts there that needed to be awakened? And Dolores did not kill her. She said that she freed her when she woke up. So, just a theory. Don't know if it's real or not, but wanted to see what you guys thought. Keep doing what you're doing. Love the podcast.
Rocky, thank you very much for calling in. So the gas mask, I thought about that as well. What I think happened is that Dolores snuck in, put the gas mask on him, and then there's a bottle next to it, which looks like it's some kind of gas to put you to sleep. So she then gassed the house, and that knocked the wife out. So then she could wake up Gerald. And also, I don't think that the wife was a host because, so in the discussion that Dolores is having with Jerry, she says, "I'm the last of my kind." If the wife is there, she wouldn't be saying that. But I think the gas mask was meant to make sure that he was going to be able to wake up and that she didn't knock him out for 2 or 3 hours. And then she had to sit there and be like, okay, shit, I got to wait for Jerry to wake up. And then the wife just happened to wake up because it had kind of worn off.
As for the maze symbol being out in the world, I've been thinking about this too. So for people who didn't catch it, it's most noticeably in the underpass. When Dolores collapses in Caleb's arms, you can see the maze kind of in the corner of the image, kind of far out on the far side of the scene. And that is very interesting. Now, there are people who have been inside of Westworld and out, and they could have brought that symbol with them, Man in Black being one example. Or it could be that hosts are out there. But again, getting back to what Big D was saying is, if Dolores either knows or believes she's the last of her kind, that wouldn't make a ton of sense. But, Big D, getting back to the last of my kind comment, there are hosts in Westworld, right? Mm-hmm. So she's not the last of her kind. Or are we to believe that Westworld has been completely wiped of hosts?
I don't know. More and more I try to rack my brain, the timelines don't match. It is supposed to be 90 days, and Bernard goes back and he finds Stubbs. Why is there like a half inch of dust on everything? It looks like that's been abandoned for quite a while. So something is going on here that maybe at the point Dolores says that, it's actually true. But that dust just really has thrown me off, because a show that is so attentive to the details, to all of a sudden decide to detail a set with dust, that was done intentionally.
Heuristics are like mental shortcuts. And one of the things our brains do is when we hear a number, like 92 days ago, 30 days ago, whatever, blah, 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 we will process that. And if there's an approximation, 90-ish days, 80 days, 30 days, and it's not that significant to us, we just log it as an amount of time passed and we move on, right? Well, it's the same thing with dust. I completely overlooked that. Why? Because mentally, my heuristic is, it's been a while since people were here. Dust gathers on things when it's been a while. And a lesser show might do that. Westworld would not do that without, intent, right? Things are there for a reason. So I do hope that we get to discover what happened to put that dust there, if it was the passage of time or something else. And then I hope it makes sense.
Yep. I think there's a lot of us who do.
So thanks everybody for writing in, calling in, giving us your actuallys. If you have an actually, or just want to write us, you can write in at host@shatontv.com, or you can call us at 914-719-SHAT. And that concludes this week's episode of Shat on TV Westworld Telegraph. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat on TV. On Facebook, just search for Shat on TV Podcast. Our website is shatontv.com. Or you can email us at host@shatontv.com. Also on our website, you can find our coverage of other TV shows, including Game of Thrones, True Detective, Taboo, Watchmen, and American Gods. That's all at shatontv.com. You can also go to shatthemovies.com and catch our movies podcast, which is coming out as we're doing Shat on TV. So we're doing double duty here. So do check that out and subscribe to it as well. We cover 80s and 90s movies. We just put out Clue. Next week, we have the immaculate Saving Private Ryan coming up, so do subscribe for that. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pandora, Spotify, and YouTube, be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ashley Schlafly, Big D, Dick Ebert, Roger Roper, and the King Bee, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us on Sunday for our Shat on TV Instagram of Westworld Season 3, Episode 3, The Absence of Field.